In just 6 years, India detonated tunnels through Himalayan rock, built runways at 13,700 feet, and strung high-speed data to thousands of border villages. These initiatives drive headlines about India's rise to superpower status. But what forced this unprecedented surge? The answer reveals a nation racing the clock, where new mega projects compress distance and challenge decades-old constraints. Is this transformation sustainable, or is it raising the stakes in ways few have considered? For decades after the 1962 war, India's far northern borderlands remained cut off from the rest of the country for months at a time. Roads where they existed were little more than foot trails carved into the mountains, navigated by porters and mule trains. Supplies for remote army outposts had to be hauled by hand, and helicopters were often grounded by thin air and unpredictable weather. In winter, snow and landslides sealed entire valleys, isolating communities and leaving forward posts unreachable for up to 6 months. This deep isolation affected daily life and military planning. The official doctrine counted on the Himalayas themselves as a shield, an immense barrier against intrusion. Engineers stationed in these regions worked with minimal machinery, improvising with whatever materials could be carried in on the backs of animals or men. For villagers living near the frontier, the arrival of the first truck or radio signal each spring was a rare event. The risk was not just military. A medical emergency or a failed harvest could become a matter of life and death. These realities produced a fragile logistics picture. That isolation shaped not only local life, but national policy, reinforcing a culture of restraint and caution in building infrastructure close to the border. The legacy of that era was a frontier defined by absence, outposts more symbolic than sustainable, and a sense of distance that often seemed impossible to bridge. By 2025, India's infrastructure and defense budgets had reached levels once thought unimaginable. The Border Roads Organization, long constrained by limited funds, saw its allocation jump from just under 4,000 crore rupees in 2020 to nearly 10,000 crore rupees within 5 years, a 142% increase. Across ministries, capital outlays for roads, rail, and power doubled, driving a national infrastructure pipeline valued at over $1.4 trillion. The Gati Shakti platform, launched in 2021, pulled together 16 ministries and thousands of projects under a single digital command, aligning highways, rail corridors, and logistics hubs with military supply chains. On the frontier, this surge translated into more than 2,000 kilometers of new roads, high-altitude tunnels, and all-weather bridges. Air defense entered a new era as all 5 S-400 regiments became operational by late 2025. Their radars and missiles now shielding the country's most vulnerable sectors. These systems, each capable of tracking hundreds of targets, form a protective net over both border and heartland. The speed and scale of this mobilization marked a clear break from the past. Decisions that once took years now moved in months, with planners and engineers coordinating in real time across agencies. The result? A platform for rapid response, economic integration, and credible deterrence is reshaping the nation's ability to project power and connect its most remote frontiers. On the Himalayan frontier, roads and fiber lines now reach valleys that once vanished beneath snow for months. Since 2020, the Border Roads Organization has laid over 1,800 kilometers of blacktop, connecting outposts and villages, making them connected even at altitudes where helicopters struggled to land. In Ladakh and Arunachal, convoys replace mule trains, and settlements once off the grid now have electricity and 4G mobile coverage under the Vibrant Villages scheme. For many, the first video call or ambulance ride is no longer a seasonal event, but part of daily life. 30 kilometers from the line of actual control, Nyoma Air Force Station stands at 13,700 feet. Its 2.7-kilometer runway, finished in late 2025, supports heavy transports and frontline fighters in thin air and winter lows near -30 degrees Celsius. Hardened shelters, fuel farms, and rapid response bays let aircraft launch within minutes, cutting reinforcement times across eastern Ladakh. Where hours once meant isolation, Nyoma now enables sustained presence and credible deterrence. To the west, the Zojila Tunnel carves a 14-kilometer passage beneath avalanche country at 11,500 feet. Built through winters down to -40 degrees Celsius, it will cut the Srinagar to Leh journey from 3.5 hours to just 15 minutes, making year-round logistics possible. Engineers relied on tunnel boring machines and real-time sensors to keep crews safe, aiming for a 2027 opening. Beyond the mountains, the Delhi-Mumbai Expressway stretches 1,386 kilometers, already cutting freight travel between India's two largest economic centers from 24 hours to 12 hours. Scheduled for completion in 2026, this 8-lane corridor anchors national supply chains and lowers logistics costs. On the western coast, the Mumbai-Ahmedabad bullet train is laying 508 kilometers of high-speed rail, targeting a 2-hour journey with test runs in 2026. Shinkansen technology brings not just speed, but new commuter corridors and precision manufacturing, signaling a leap in urban integration. On the coastline, India's ports are undergoing the largest modernization in the country's history. The Sagarmala program, with over $120 billion in investment, is transforming more than 200 ports and terminals. Automated cranes, deep water berths, and new transshipment hubs like Vizianjam have increased capacity by 30% since 2020. These upgrades cut shipping costs by nearly a third, allowing megaships to dock and move containers straight onto inland freight corridors. For exporters, this means goods reach global markets faster and more reliably, while the Navy gains new dual-use facilities for rapid deployment. Inland, the Bharatmala Pariyojana is weaving together an 83,000-kilometer network of highways, economic corridors, and expressways. Phase 1 alone has awarded 25,000 kilometers, with completion targeted for 2030. This grid connects manufacturing centers, agricultural zones, and border regions, compressing travel times and creating redundancy for both civilian and strategic movement. The result is a national market where goods and people flow with unprecedented speed, lowering logistics costs and boosting competitiveness. Water security is getting its own mega-scale solution. The Ken-Betwa River Link, launched in 2023 at a cost of $3 billion, is transferring water from the Ken River to the drought-prone Betwa Basin. When complete, it will irrigate over 1 million hectares and generate 100 megawatts of hydropower, giving farmers in Bundelkhand a buffer against failed monsoons and climate shocks. In the skies, Navi Mumbai International Airport is preparing to handle 60 million passengers annually. The first phase opens in late 2025, relieving pressure from Mumbai's existing airport and linking seamlessly to metro and cargo networks. This new hub will anchor Western India trade and tourism for decades to come. At the financial core, Gift City in Gujarat is fast becoming a $20 billion magnet for global banking and fintech. Home to over 500 firms and India's only international financial services center, Gift City enables onshore trading of rupee-denominated instruments and handles $50 billion in assets. Regulators, bankers, and tech entrepreneurs work side by side, projecting India's financial influence far beyond its borders. Lieutenant General D.S. Huda describes the transformation along India's northern border as nothing short of remarkable. Roads, tunnels, and airfields now stand where isolation once defined the frontier. Huda says the infrastructure development in the last few years has been transformative. He notes that India has built roads, bridges, tunnels, and airfields at altitudes and locations that were unimaginable a few years back. This has given us all-weather connectivity to our forward areas. Huda points to year-round access and a sustained presence as a decisive advantage, calling it a game-changer for deterrence. Rajeshwari Pillai Rajagopalan offers a caution. She warns that the same assets compress crisis timelines. Improved infrastructure on both sides compresses response times dramatically from weeks to hours. This raises the stakes in a crisis, as forces can rush to the border quickly, potentially leading to miscalculation or accidental escalation. The debate now stands between readiness and risk, with India's new reach promising both security and sharper dilemmas. By 2030, the payoff from these mega projects could be measured in trillions of dollars added to GDP, and a logistics bill slashed nearly in half. Faster highways and automated ports are projected to drop national logistics costs from 14% of GDP to as low as 8% of GDP, freeing capital for investment and export growth. Experts forecast a 2 to 3% GDP uplift from infrastructure multipliers alone, with manufacturing and services gaining new reach into global markets. But the same networks that enable overnight mobilization also compress the window for diplomacy. As military assets move closer to the frontier, and response times shrink from days to hours, the risk of accidental escalation rises. These projects unlock prosperity and deterrence, but they also demand new levels of vigilance and crisis management from policymakers. The next decade will test whether India's bet on speed and scale delivers growth without tipping the balance toward confrontation. Today, India builds not just roads and runways, but the foundations of power and vulnerability. As infrastructure compresses distance, response times shrink for trade and for crisis. The true test now is whether ambition can keep pace with restraint. The next decade will reveal which force prevails.